The skies above Earth were bright that morning, clear and calm, a rarity in the bustling metropolis of San Diego. Dr. Linnea Carter sat in her lab, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of her computer monitor. She had been an epidemiologist for over 15 years, dedicating her life to understanding pathogens and their complex, microscopic dances. But that day, the anomalies on her screen didn't make sense. She leaned closer, adjusting her glasses as she scrutinized the data. The sample in question, a routine viral culture taken from a series of flu patients, showed behavior that defied classification. It wasn't entirely viral, nor bacterial. It was something else. "Hey, Linnea!" called her research partner, Derek, as he walked into the lab with a coffee in hand. "Please tell me you're not about to drag me into another one of your conspiracy theories." Linnea rolled her eyes but didn't look up from the screen. "I'm serious, Derek. Look at this. These replication rates don't match anything in our database. And the way it's mutating, it's like it's learning." Derek raised an eyebrow, peering over her shoulder. "Mutating? Isn't that like Virus 101? What's the big deal?" "The big deal," Linnea said, swiveling to face him, "is that it's not behaving like any virus we've ever studied. It's more deliberate. Almost strategic." Derek opened his mouth to respond, but the sound of a distant explosion shook the building. Both of them froze, their eyes darting to the windows. A plume of smoke was rising from downtown San Diego. "What the hell was that?" Derek asked, his voice tinged with alarm. Linnea's phone buzzed on the desk. She snatched it up, her stomach tightening as she read the emergency alert. "Mandatory lockdown. Biological hazard detected. Stay indoors." "This isn't a coincidence," Linnea muttered, grabbing her lab coat. "We need to get to the central server. If this thing is related to the outbreak." Derek put a hand on her shoulder, his face pale. "You're not saying this is the same thing we've been studying?" "I don't know," Linnea admitted, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her chest. "But if it is, we're in serious trouble." Halfway across the globe, in the vast expanse of the Australian outback, a high-tech surveillance drone hovered silently above a nondescript shed. Inside, Commander Jax Halstead monitored his squad's comms, his sharp eyes flicking between screens displaying feeds from satellites, reconnaissance drones, and news broadcasts. "Sir, we're picking up chatter about a viral outbreak in North America," said his second-in-command, Sergeant Amelia Park. "Reports are conflicting, but some are claiming it's spreading too fast for a natural pathogen." Jax frowned, leaning closer to the screen. "Too fast? Define too fast." Amelia tapped her tablet, bringing up a map. Red dots blinked across the United States, spreading outward like wildfire. Initial reports were localized to California, but within hours, cases have been confirmed in Oregon, Nevada, and as far east as Colorado. "That's not how viruses move." Jax narrowed his eyes. "This isn't a pandemic. This is a weapon." Before Amelia could respond, the feed cut out, replaced by static. Jax's earpiece buzzed with a distorted signal. A second later, a voice filled the room, cold, precise, and inhuman. "Attention, inhabitants of Earth. You are experiencing the first stage of the cleansing. Surrender your planet to the Vrex Dominion, or face total eradication." Jax stared at the screen, his fists clenching. "Patch me through to command," he barked. "We've got an invasion on our hands." Linnea and Derek worked feverishly in their lab, even as the world outside descended into chaos. The viral samples under their microscopes revealed horrifying truths. The pathogen wasn't just mutating, it was designed to mutate. It targeted human DNA with pinpoint accuracy, exploiting genetic vulnerabilities to ensure rapid transmission and maximum lethality. "This isn't from Earth," Linnea said, her voice barely a whisper. Derek looked at her, his face pale. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Linnea said, meeting his eyes, "this virus was engineered by someone, not from here. It's too perfect, too sophisticated." Before Derek could respond, the lab's emergency lights flickered on, bathing the room in a red glow. The intercom crackled to life. This is an evacuation order. All personnel must leave immediately. Airborne contamination detected. Linnea grabbed her laptop, shoving it into her bag. We need to go. What about the samples? Derek asked. Linnea hesitated. We can't take them with us, it's too risky. But if we can get to the CDC or another secure lab, we might have a chance at synthesizing a counteragent. The two of them hurried through the building, the sound of distant sirens and panicked voices filling the air. As they emerged into the parking lot, Linnea's phone buzzed again. It was a news alert. Outbreak spreads globally. Possible extraterrestrial involvement suspected. Derek read over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. Extraterrestrial. They're finally saying it. Linnea nodded grimly. And if they're right, this isn't just about stopping a virus. It's about surviving an invasion. In orbit above Earth, the Vrex Dominion's fleet loomed like a dark storm, their ships casting shadows over the planet below. At the center of the fleet, the Dominion's leader, Overlord Varen, stood in the command chamber of the flagship, watching as Earth's surface writhed with chaos. They are reacting as expected, Varen said, his voice smooth and cold. Their primitive minds cannot comprehend the precision of our weapon. One of his lieutenants approached, bowing low. Overlord, the humans have begun resisting. Their military is attempting to mobilize, and there are reports of scientists working on countermeasures. Varen's lip curled into a sneer. Let them try. They are but insects, flailing against the inevitable. The lieutenant hesitated. There is one anomaly, Overlord. A signal originating from one of their laboratories suggests they may have identified the pathogen's origin. Varen's eyes narrowed. Then ensure they do not act on it. Deploy ground units to neutralize any potential threats. Yes, Overlord, the lieutenant said, bowing again before retreating. Varen turned back to the holographic display of Earth, his expression unreadable. Let the cleansing continue, he murmured. This planet will be ours. Back on Earth, Linnea and Derek reached a temporary shelter set up by local authorities. The atmosphere inside was tense, with families huddled together and volunteers distributing supplies. Linnea set up her laptop in a corner, using a patchy Wi-Fi connection to contact other researchers. We need to pull our data, she told Derek. If there's even a chance we can stop this thing, we have to act fast. Derek nodded, though his expression remained grim. What if it's too late? What if we can't stop it? Linnea looked at him, her eyes blazing with determination. Then we fight anyway. Because if we don't, no one will. As the two of them worked, the world outside continued to unravel. But amidst the chaos, whispers of resistance began to spread. Across the globe, pockets of humanity rose up, not just scientists and soldiers, but ordinary people who refused to give up. Linnea clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. If the Vrex thought humanity would roll over and surrender, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The streets were silent, save for the faint hum of drones that patrolled above, their sleek forms cutting through the darkened skies. Linnea Carter peered through a cracked window in the abandoned library she and Derek had holed up in after the shelter was overrun. The outbreak was spreading faster than any model could predict, and the air itself felt heavier, as though humanity's collective fear had become a tangible weight. We've lost California, Derek said, staring at his laptop. His voice was hollow, his face lit only by the faint glow of the screen. Reports say it's entirely quarantined now. Military's pulled out, and they've erected a perimeter around the entire state. Linnea tightened her grip on the edge of the window frame. Quarantined or abandoned? Derek didn't answer. He didn't have to. Both knew what the word meant in practice. No one was going in or out. California had become a dead zone. The virus was moving faster than any simulation had suggested. Within 48 hours, it had spread across borders, crossing oceans as if mocking humanity's efforts to contain it. Whole cities were falling silent, and emergency broadcasts were now sporadic, riddled with desperate pleas for cooperation. I can't believe this is happening, Derek muttered. We're supposed to be the dominant species on this planet. Now we're being wiped out like pests. Linnea turned to him, her expression hardened by hours of analysis and mounting frustration. We're not wiped out yet. And we're not pests. Derek looked up at her, his eyes weary. Tell that to them. He pointed at his screen, where a grainy satellite feed showed one of the Vrex warships hovering ominously over Seattle. Smaller ships descended in steady streams, deploying ground forces. The footage cut out abruptly, replaced by static. Linnea clenched her jaw. We've faced pandemics before, Derek. We've faced invasions, wars, and disasters. We adapt. That's what makes us different. But this isn't just a pandemic, Derek argued. This is a calculated, weaponized virus. It's not just adapting to us, it's outpacing us. Then we'll find a way to outpace it, Linnea said. Her voice was steady, but Derek could see the strain behind her eyes. In a covert military bunker somewhere in the Rocky Mountains, Commander Jax Halstead paced the war room. The holographic map before him displayed red zones across the planet, areas already overwhelmed by the Vrex virus and their ground forces. Pockets of resistance blinked faintly, their strength diminishing with each passing hour. We've confirmed that the virus is targeting human DNA exclusively, Sergeant Amelia Park said, standing at attention beside him. It's bypassing every other species. Livestock, wildlife, even the microbes in our biosphere, untouched. Jax stopped pacing and turned to face her. Which means what? It was tailor-made for us? Precisely, Amelia said. And it's evolving. Faster than any natural pathogen could. Jax rubbed his temples, the enormity of the situation pressing down on him. What about Carter's team? She sent out a data packet a few hours ago. Something about tracking the virus's RNA patterns. Amelia tapped her tablet, bringing up a report. Her findings are promising. If we can get her to a secure lab, she might be able to isolate the viral mechanism and reverse engineer a counteragent. And the Vrex? Jax asked. They know she's a threat, Amelia said grimly. They've deployed ground forces in her area. If we don't act fast, she won't make it to morning. Jax straightened, his decision made. Prep a team. We're getting her out. Linnea was hunched over her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard, when she heard the distinct hum of Vrex drones. She froze, her heart pounding. Derek, seated a few feet away, looked up sharply. Tell me that's just a passing patrol, he whispered. Linnea didn't answer. She carefully moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. The drones were circling the library now, their lights scanning the streets below. They've found us, she said, her voice tight. Derek scrambled to his feet. What do we do? Before Linnea could answer, the wall behind them exploded. The force threw both of them to the ground, debris raining down as dust filled the air. Linnea coughed, struggling to her feet, her ears ringing. Through the smoke, she could make out the silhouette of a Vrex enforcer, a massive, armored figure with glowing red eyes and a weapon that looked like a fusion of a cannon and a scythe. Run! Linnea shouted, grabbing Derek's arm. They sprinted through the library's darkened halls, the enforcer's heavy footsteps echoing behind them. A second explosion rocked the building, and Linnea stumbled, nearly falling before Derek caught her. We're not going to outrun them! Derek shouted. Linnea's mind raced. They needed a way out, but the drones had the building surrounded, and the enforcer was closing in. She pulled Derek into a side room, slamming the door shut and barricading it with a desk. This won't hold, Derek said, his voice shaking. Linnea ignored him, pulling a small device from her bag. It was an improvised signal disruptor she'd been working on, a crude but potentially effective tool for jamming Vrex communications. If we can disrupt their link to the hive mind, we might be able to buy some time, she said, quickly activating the device. The disruptor emitted a high-pitched whine, and the enforcer on the other side of the door paused, its movements becoming jerky and uncoordinated. It's working, Derek said, a hint of hope in his voice. But the reprieve was short-lived. The disruptor sparked and died, unable to sustain the strain of jamming the advanced Vrex systems. The enforcer regained its composure and began pounding on the door. "This is it," Derek muttered, sinking to the floor. Before Linnea could respond, the sound of gunfire erupted outside. The pounding on the door stopped abruptly, and Linnea risked a peek through the shattered window. A team of heavily armed soldiers was engaging the Vrex drones, their weapons emitting bursts of blue energy that cut through the alien machines like butter. The leader of the group, a tall figure clad in advanced combat armor, motioned toward the library. Moments later, the door burst open, and Commander Jax Halstead stepped inside. "Dr. Carter, I presume?" he said, his voice calm but urgent. Linnea nodded, too stunned to speak. "We're here to get you out," Jax said. "You've got work to do." The extraction was chaotic. Jax's team covered Linnea and Derek as they made their way to an armored transport vehicle parked nearby. The streets were crawling with Vrex ground forces, and the team had to fight their way through several skirmishes to reach safety. Inside the transport, Linnea quickly relayed what she'd learned about the virus. Jax listened intently, his expression grim. "So, you're saying this thing is evolving faster than we can track it?" he asked. "Yes," Linnea said. "But I think I've found a vulnerability. The virus relies on a centralized signal from the Vrex fleet to maintain its rapid mutation. If we can disrupt that signal, we can stop the virus," Jax finished. Linnea nodded. "But we'll need access to advanced equipment. And we'll need to get close to the source." Jax exchanged a glance with Amelia, who was manning the vehicle's comms. "Then we're taking the fight to them." Linnea's eyes widened. "You mean?" Jax's expression hardened. "We're going after the Vrex mothership." The transport roared through the desolate streets, its reinforced tires crunching over rubble and debris. Linnea sat in the back, her hands gripping the edge of a console as the vehicle swayed violently with every sharp turn. The occasional blast from a Vrex drone echoed in the distance, but Commander Jax Halstead's team was efficient, neutralizing threats with military precision. Beside her, Derek looked pale and disoriented. "You know," he said, his voice trembling, "I always thought if aliens came to Earth, it'd be more dignified. Like giant ships hovering around, demanding we surrender. Not viruses and drones hunting us down like rats." Linnea gave him a sidelong glance. "Dignity's not really their goal." Jax's voice came over the comm from the front of the vehicle. "We're approaching the staging area. Stay sharp. The Vrex don't like to leave anything to chance." Linnea leaned forward. "What's the plan once we're there?" Jax turned briefly, his eyes sharp beneath his helmet. "We load up on supplies, sync with the team already on site, and move out. This isn't just a rescue mission anymore. If you're right about the signal, we need to get you to that mothership." "And how do we get there?" Derek asked. "You have a spaceship hidden in your back pocket?" Jax's lips twitched into a faint smirk. "Something like that." The staging area was a hidden military bunker carved into the side of a mountain. The moment the transport rolled into the cavernous underground space, soldiers and engineers swarmed around it, unloading equipment and refueling the vehicle. Linnea and Derek were ushered into a central command room, where holographic displays of Earth and the Vrex fleet floated above a large table. Jax motioned to Amelia, who was already coordinating with a team of technicians. "Give us the rundown." Amelia tapped a few controls, and the holographic display zoomed in on the Vrex mothership, a massive, angular structure bristling with weapons and pulsating with an eerie red glow. "This is our target," Amelia said. "The Vrex mothership is the central hub for their operations on Earth. It's the source of the signal that keeps the virus mutating and adapting. If we can shut it down, the virus will destabilize, and their drones will lose coordination." "And how do we do that?" Linnea asked. Amelia pointed to a section of the ship's schematic. "There's a primary signal relay at the heart of the mothership. It's heavily shielded, but if we can plant an EMP device close enough, it'll fry the relay and disrupt the entire network." Derek crossed his arms. "Let me guess. It's not as simple as walking in and plugging it in." "Not even close," Jax said. "The mothership is protected by multiple layers of defense. We'll need to infiltrate undetected, which means using a stealth transport. And how do we get on board? Linnea asked. Amelia tapped another control, and the display shifted to show a Vrex shuttle. We've managed to capture one of their smaller crafts. Our engineers have retrofitted it with cloaking tech, but the window for remaining undetected is limited. Once we're inside, it'll be up to us to complete the mission. Linnea took a deep breath, the weight of the task settling over her. And if we fail? Jax met her gaze, his expression grim. Then Earth is finished. The captured Vrex shuttle was a sleek, metallic vessel, its surface covered in glowing alien glyphs. Linnea, Derek, and Jax's team boarded it under the cover of night, the soldiers moving with practiced efficiency as they secured the EMP device and their equipment. Linnea sat in the cockpit beside Jax, her hands gripping the armrests as the shuttle lifted off. The interior hummed with energy, the alien technology unnervingly smooth and featureless. First time flying into an alien war zone? Jax asked, glancing at her. Linnea gave a shaky laugh. First time flying, period. Jax smirked faintly. Just stick to the plan, and we'll be fine. The shuttle ascended through the atmosphere, the blue sky giving way to the infinite black of space. Linnea stared out the viewport, her breath catching as the Vrex fleet came into view. The mothership loomed ahead, its massive form surrounded by smaller warships and drones. Amelia's voice crackled over the comm. Cloaking is holding, but their sensors are starting to pick up anomalies. We've got about 5 minutes before they detect us. Make it count, Jax said, steering the shuttle toward an entry point identified on the schematic. The shuttle slid into a docking bay on the underside of the mothership, the cloaking field flickering as it powered down. The team disembarked quickly, their boots clanging against the alien metal floor. Stay sharp, Jax said, his voice low. We're on borrowed time. The interior of the mothership was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers, the walls glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. The team moved in silence, their weapons at the ready. Linnea followed closely behind Jax, clutching a small tablet loaded with the ship's schematics. How far to the relay? She whispered. 3 levels up, Jax replied. We'll need to bypass a security checkpoint to get there. They reached the checkpoint moments later, a wide chamber guarded by a pair of Vrex enforcers. The towering, armored figures stood motionless, their glowing eyes scanning the room. Jax signaled for the team to hold. We can't engage them directly. We'll have to create a diversion. Derek, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. What kind of diversion? Jax smirked. The kind that makes a lot of noise. The diversion worked barely. Using a combination of improvised explosives and decoy signals, the team managed to lure the enforcers away from the checkpoint. But the commotion had drawn the attention of other Vrex units, and the team was now racing against time. Linnea and Jax reached the relay chamber first, the others covering their flank. The chamber was massive, dominated by a glowing, crystalline structure suspended in the center. Streams of energy pulsed through it, the signal emanating from its core. Linnea set down the EMP device and began calibrating it. Her hands shook as she worked, the weight of the mission pressing down on her. Hurry, Jax said, his eyes scanning the room for threats. I'm going as fast as I can. Linnea snapped, her voice tight. The door burst open, and a squad of Vrex drones poured in. Jax opened fire, his energy rifle lighting up the chamber as he held them off. Almost there! Linnea shouted, her fingers flying over the controls. The device beeped, signaling that it was armed. Linnea grabbed the detonator and turned to Jax. It's ready! Fall back! Jax ordered, firing one last shot before retreating with Linnea. The team regrouped in the corridor, but the Vrex were closing in fast. Linnea gripped the detonator tightly, her heart pounding. Do it! Jax shouted. Linnea pressed the button. The EMP detonated, sending a shockwave through the mothership. The lights flickered and dimmed, and the sound of the relay's energy stream cut off abruptly. They're blind. Amelia's voice crackled over the comm. The signal is down! But the victory was short-lived. The mothership trembled violently, alarms blaring as systems began to fail. Linnea's stomach dropped as she realized what was happening. "The core's destabilizing," she said. "This whole ship is going to blow." "Then we're out of here," Jax said. "Move!" The team raced back to the shuttle, dodging falling debris and panicked Rex soldiers. Linnea stumbled as an explosion rocked the corridor, but Jax pulled her to her feet, dragging her forward. They reached the shuttle just as the mothership's internal structure began to collapse. Jax slammed the controls, and the shuttle shot out of the docking bay, narrowly avoiding the explosion that consumed the mothership moments later. The team watched from the viewport as the massive ship disintegrated, its debris scattering across the void. Linnea sank into her seat, her chest heaving. "We did it," she whispered. Jax nodded, his expression unreadable. "This isn't over. But it's a start." Below them, Earth glowed faintly in the darkness, a fragile yet unyielding beacon of resilience. The shattered remains of the Rex mothership drifted in orbit like a silent warning to the rest of the fleet. On board the commandeered shuttle, Linnea Carter stared out the viewport, her breath fogging the glass as her mind raced. They had struck a crippling blow, but the battle was far from over. The virus was still active, and though its rapid mutations had ceased, the damage it had already wrought on Earth was catastrophic. "Status report," Commander Jax Halstead barked, his voice cutting through the tense silence. Amelia Park's fingers flew over the controls as she scanned the system readouts. "The mothership is gone, sir. Signal disruption confirmed. Ground reports indicate the drones are malfunctioning without centralized coordination. The virus is stabilizing." Linnea turned sharply. "Stabilizing?" Amelia nodded. "It's no longer mutating, but it's still active in infected individuals. The biological damage has already been done. We've stopped it from evolving, but we haven't neutralized it." Jax's jaw tightened. "Then we need to neutralize it. What's our next move, Doctor?" Linnea hesitated, her mind sifting through everything she knew about the virus. "The virus was engineered to rely on that signal, but its core structure still functions. To neutralize it entirely, we'll need to introduce a counteragent that targets its RNA and shuts it down." "And where do we get this counteragent?" Jax asked. Linnea glanced at Derek, who sat silently in the corner, staring at the faint glow of Earth in the distance. "I've been analyzing its structure since the outbreak began. I have the framework for a counteragent, but I'll need a high-capacity lab to synthesize it." Jax nodded. "We'll get you what you need. Park, plot a course back to the surface. We're not done yet." The shuttle descended into Earth's atmosphere, streaking across the sky like a falling star. Below, the planet was scarred but still alive. Fires raged in some cities, while others were eerily silent, their streets littered with abandoned vehicles and debris. Yet amidst the destruction, signs of resistance glimmered, faint but undeniable. Linnea watched as the shuttle approached a hidden military facility nestled in the Rockies. The base was a hive of activity, with soldiers and engineers working tirelessly to repair equipment and coordinate survivors. As the shuttle landed, Linnea and Derek were escorted to the facility's central lab, a sterile, high-tech environment that hummed with energy. It was a stark contrast to the chaos outside, a sanctuary of order amidst the storm. "This is it," Linnea said, setting her laptop on the central console. "We have the tools we need." Jax and Amelia stood nearby, their eyes scanning the room. "How long will it take to synthesize this counteragent?" Jax asked. Linnea glanced at the equipment, her mind calculating. "If everything goes smoothly, a few hours. But deploying it, that's another matter." "We'll handle the deployment," Jax said. "You focus on getting it ready." The hours ticked by as Linnea and Derek worked feverishly, their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed dance. The lab was filled with the soft hum of machinery and the occasional beep of monitors. Every so often, Linnea would glance at the clock, the weight of the world pressing on her shoulders. "What if this doesn't work?" Derek asked quietly, his hands steady despite the tremor in his voice. Linnea didn't look up. "It will. But what if?" "It will," she repeated, her voice firm. We don't have room for doubt. Derek fell silent, focusing on his task. The two worked without pause, their exhaustion forgotten in the face of what was at stake. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the counteragent was ready. A small vial of clear liquid sat in the center of the table, its simplicity belying its potential to save billions of lives. "It's done," Linnea said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack stepped forward, his eyes locking onto the vial. "How do we deploy it?" Linnea hesitated. "We'll need to aerosolize it and distribute it globally. That means hijacking the Vrex's remaining infrastructure, their drones, their atmospheric processors. We can turn their own tools against them." Jack smirked. "I like the sound of that." The plan was ambitious, bordering on impossible, but the team had no other choice. Using the captured Vrex technology, they hacked into the remnants of the alien network, redirecting drones and processors to distribute the counteragent. The operation required coordination on a massive scale. Linnea and Derek worked in the lab, fine-tuning the counteragent's dispersal parameters, while Jax and Amelia directed ground teams and resistance fighters to secure key locations. The first test run was a success. A small city in the Midwest, one of the first hit by the virus, showed signs of recovery within hours of the counteragent's release. Infected individuals began to stabilize, their symptoms fading as the virus was neutralized. Encouraged by the results, the team pushed forward, expanding the operation to other regions. The counteragent spread through the air, carried by the same systems the Vrex had used to propagate their weapon. In orbit, the remaining Vrex ships were in disarray. Without their mothership and centralized command, the fleet's coordination was fractured. Smaller vessels fled into deep space, while others drifted aimlessly, their crews abandoning their posts. On the bridge of one of these ships, Overlord Varen stood motionless, his glowing eyes fixed on the image of Earth below. He had underestimated these humans, dismissed them as primitives. Now, his fleet was in ruins, and his weapon had been turned against him. "They are resilient," Varen muttered, his voice tinged with something that might have been respect, or fear. On Earth, the final stages of the operation were underway. The counteragent had reached every corner of the globe, and reports of recovery were pouring in. Cities were beginning to stir, their populations emerging from the shadows as the virus receded. In the military base, Linnea watched the news feeds with tears in her eyes. For the first time in weeks, the images were of hope, not despair. "We did it," Derek said, slumping into a chair. "We actually did it." Jax entered the lab, his expression unusually relaxed. "Ground teams are reporting minimal resistance. The Vrex are retreating." Linnea nodded, her exhaustion finally catching up to her. "They won't forget this. They'll come back." Jax smirked. "Let them. They'll know what they're up against now." Weeks later, as Earth began to rebuild, Linnea stood on a hill overlooking the city. The scars of the invasion were still visible, but so was the resilience of humanity. Streets were bustling again, and the air was filled with the sound of construction and laughter. Derek joined her, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. "They're calling it the Great Defiance," he said, handing her a cup. "The day humanity stood up and said, 'Not today, aliens.'" Linnea chuckled, the sound light and free for the first time in months. "Not the most elegant title, but it fits." Derek grinned. "You think they'll come back?" "Maybe," Linnea said, her gaze distant. "But if they do, we'll be ready." Behind them, the city glowed with life, a testament to humanity's resilience and determination. The Vrex had underestimated them, and now the galaxy would know, Earth was not a planet to be conquered. It was a force to be reckoned with.